but I told myself it was temporary. But even then, the damage of doing that temporarily to my mental health was a lot. And it took me a while to overcome that.
Hello, hello.
Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode. We've got Al joining us again. And today we wanted to really focus our conversation on MMA. I know we briefly mentioned this in our previous episode. With you, Al, you've done martial arts pretty much all your life.
Yep.
But specifically looking back to maybe high school time, that was probably the period of when you've essentially started your MMA career.
Yeah, we can say that.
So obviously you're training, as you mentioned in that previous episode, you're doing BJJ predominantly, as well as
Muay Thai. Yeah, I was doing Muay Thai.
So during that period, from what I saw you do, you essentially were doing, you were basically balancing school, training, and working.
Yep.
So you're working at the gym, right?
I was working at the gym as well, so that helped balance it. But yeah, that was all three of those things were happening. Because I also went to uni afterwards when I finished school and kept that going.
And how did you find balancing all three during high school? That is, because it seemed like you were going to school, you're fucking working after hours as well as training. So how the hell did you balance all of those?
Wait, before that, how many hours did you train, and then how many hours did you work as well as school?
So what I tried to do was an hour of training in the morning, 4 days a week. So that gave me some leeway in school, right? Because I could do those hours on like Saturday, Sunday, and then there was only two other days in the week that I had to get up early. And then I would generally train from about 5-ish to about 8:30.
Wow.
Yeah, most nights. That was Monday to Thursday. I did a Friday night training for another, I think that was an hour and a half session. And then I did a Saturday morning session for another 3 hours, 4 hours, depending on what I was doing. Yeah.
And working, like work hours?
Yeah. So I was really lucky because I was allowed to teach despite being really young and get paid for it. So
nice.
I could work. But then the downside of that was I had to be on the ball, right? You can't just focus on your own training. You have to go somewhere to train, but also think about, other people's development, how to teach stuff at the same time as training yourself. So when I say I was training that many hours, I was also teaching. So it's not like I was just going hard for 3 hours, but you do slot it in even when you're teaching. Yeah. And yeah, that was probably, that was about the training load I was doing.
Far out. And that training, was that like a choice that you made personally, or was that something that you've always, like, family was always like, hey man, you should do this kind of training? Or was that something?
Man, it was just so much trial and error, right?
Yeah.
There was like a portion there where I was like, I need a lot of cardio. Then I realized, oh shit, like I need to be stronger. So then I had to start looking up, okay, well, what kind of things got to do for like powerlifting, for example, supplement some of the strength development I needed for jiu-jitsu. And then there were cases where you go, actually, you need to move into, like, I would either cut weight or I'd want to put weight on, and you change how you train depending on what you're doing. And it just took a lot of time, because no matter what you're doing, like you always need a baseline amount of cardio. You always need a baseline amount of strength and conditioning, and you always needed to keep your technique training up. So it was always just like, the pendulum swung in different directions there, but ultimately that was just the load that I felt like I needed at the time. I definitely overtrained for sure, but part of that was just experimenting, figuring out how to train.
So was this something that you were passionate about, or was it like your parents were like, you should try self-defense?
Nah, man, that was all me. I love fighting. Like I love everything to do with martial arts. And to this day, like I don't really train very much, but I watch so many fights. Like I'll still break down fights for myself. I'll still like get recordings of things and look at techniques that people going
That's
over.
hectic.
It's just man, I've always been like in love with martial arts. It's just always been fascinating to me.
Like ever since you were really young, like.
Yeah, so I started when I was about 10. About 10. So it was just, I had to do it. And to me, to this day, I think it's the most exciting and complicated little puzzle that I can find. That is just, it's just fun.
Nice.
But it's brutal. And that's why I don't train very much nowadays. It's hard on your body.
You're injured constantly, eh? That's the
Yeah, it's like I've got a lot of injuries and I got a lot of major injuries. But I also know a lot of older jiu-jitsu guys, Muay Thai guys, and they, man, like you see these guys, they get into their 50s and like they don't look too good. You know, like I don't know if a lot of the guys that I trained with who are in their 50s now, I don't know how they're going to go running after their grandchildren in another 5 years, despite not even being 60 yet. You know, I want to train a bit more, but I need to figure out the next problem, which is training with longevity.
Yeah, that's true.
Mind. Yeah. And I haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that you obviously started when you're 10. So for the listeners, you've been done for you've done it for roughly 20 or so years, right?
Oh,
consistently,
yeah.
Basically, like training.
No, because the past since COVID, not consistently, because I tore my ACL at the start of COVID, and I haven't and I tried training a few times with the torn ACL, and it didn't work out so well. I think I might be able to do Muay Thai. I am looking to get it fixed, but that's a whole nother different conversation. But yeah, so like essentially 20 years minus, the past 2 years of not having ACL. And I didn't get it fixed immediately because I canceled ACL surgeries when COVID started.
Yeah, that sucks.
So it's like a solid 2 years that you've kind of kept that injury lurking around.
Yeah, but it's all right. Like I do so many things now. I can run now, which is
that's good.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm kind of half been procrastinating on as well. Yeah.
But also a little background for the ones that didn't hear the previous episode. What type of martial arts did you train in?
So I did a few different styles of Taekwondo. I've done boxing. I've done some Filipino stick martial arts. I've done Muay Thai, I've done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I've done some freestyle wrestling and some judo.
Nice. And were there like any primary ones that you stuck around?
So really like Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu were pretty key.
Yeah.
For me. But in the last few years that I was training properly, man, like freestyle wrestling, I didn't do it for as long, but the intensity that it took over towards the end, it was replacing Muay Thai, it was replacing Jiu-Jitsu. I was doing a lot of that.
It's because of physical strength as well as the technique is what?
Man, it's physically the hardest out of all of them. Mentally, it's the hardest out of all of them. And I always like to think about a martial art as how effective it can actually be in a fight setting or an MMA setting. And man, wrestling is the answer to like what if you could have a martial art that your fighter is going to start with, it's always going to be wrestling. You get to be fit, you get to be strong, and you get to have the skill set that chooses where the fight happens. It's just it's like an advantage you can't deny.
Yeah, that's why I always hear in MMA fights, they always say how dominating wrestling is when it comes to that sport. And people who have a wrestling background, they are very, very good in the ring outside of stand-up fighting as well. To know that you have to be mentally and physically strong. Because for me, I've never done wrestling before, so I don't know the specifics of it. But hearing about other people talk about it, it seems like it's a really strong martial arts to have in your staple.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's the hardest one I've done. Like without a doubt, it's not even close. It was just that hard. And you look at American collegiate wrestlers today, or you look at like Olympic wrestlers, like what they go through and put themselves through, including the weight cutting, which is an important part of fighting, is it's something else. Like it's actually kind of gross how bad it is, but it's a powerful martial art.
Yeah.
And it has been underrated in the past, but not anymore.
So taking it back to about the balance thing, when you did school and training and like working, was it difficult for you to do all three, or were you like just happy to just do all three?
Oh, dude, I fucked it all up. Like I didn't do any of it well. I almost failed school. I shouldn't have gone into uni.
Really?
Yeah, dude, I got like an OP, like, I don't know, like 15, 16.
Dude, that's not that bad.
Yeah. I got worse than that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got OP 17, bro. Oh, gee.
I think I got 18.
And well, look, I was trying to get into engineering, right? And like, I was pretty far from that cutoff.
Yeah.
And so I shouldn't have gone into uni. I was told by the career counselor I shouldn't have gone to uni. And it was a fair thing to say because I actually skipped so much school.
Really?
Yeah, I failed so much because I just didn't go.
Oh, shit.
And in terms of training, like in working, like I was just burnt out all the time. And I got quite a few injuries, and I got pretty sick. And that's why I didn't end up pursuing MMA as a career, actually, is because I had a few health scares. And a lot of that was related to how much I was doing.
Yeah.
And so like you can, this is not a motivational thing where it's like, yeah, if you just fucking do all this thing all the time, you're going to be fine. Like you can really try to do so much, you do nothing at all. Like,
yeah.
That's the reality of this.
Yeah. So you didn't go to school, was it because you were like trying to recover, like you were training? Or...
I got glandular fever.
Yeah.
And that really put me out. Like I got the lingering fatigue from that. I had that for like 8 months.
Holy crap.
So I just stopped going to school. And then, yeah, I just didn't go.
Yeah.
And I also was like, oh, I'm going to be a pro MMA fighter. Fuck this. And, but no, I was just like, not only was I failing at school, I also was getting sick and getting injured doing MMA. And, and I got so bad and worn out and stressed out that I was passing out.
Wow.
Like I was just like passing out side of the road. Like,
really?
Yeah.
Like just randomly just drop.
I would just pass out and end up in hospital. And, it was pretty bad. So it's just like, yeah, you can't overdo it for sure.
Yeah. Well, that was actually part of our next question was like, did you burn out? So I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah. Holy fuck. I didn't know that. Well, actually I did, but I didn't know that it happened so often in terms of you passing out, man.
Yeah. So I had a few years, probably about 2 years where I passed out a bunch of times.
Fucking hell.
From like 2011 through to 2000 and like end of 2012.
Wow, that's crazy.
But I had a few points where I just passed out, and after that point, like I changed my perspective for a few things, and then I had a few other epiphanies. I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to get punched in the head for a career.
What were those life-changing moments that you changed, like those thoughts or mindset?
Yeah.
So I passed out and I hit my head on a sink, like a ceramic sink.
Oh fuck!
And I couldn't move when I woke up, and my fingers were numb. And so the paramedics clearly were like, oh, this guy's fucked. So they put me in a neck brace and they took me to the hospital. And it was this funny thing because I had this doctor who was like that dude from The Simpsons. He's like, when he's like, oh yeah, and your veins connected to my wristwatch, like that guy.
Yeah. I
had one of those dudes, and he was like, oh, fine, let's just take him off his neck brace. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. My x-ray's probably fine. And then a nurse came in and said, dude, what the fuck are you doing? His x-ray showed a fractured neck. And I was like, what the hell? And he's like, if he moves, he could go paralyzed. I was like,
oh my God.
Shit. And so I got locked in, and then and then so they took me again to take another x-ray, and they like cut my shirt off, and I was like, oh, it's my favorite shirt. Yeah. And then they took the x-ray again and found out it looked like it was clear, but they weren't sure. So then I had to get opinion from a specialist who was not working at the time. And so I was like in a neck brace for like, a whole day. And they said, don't move, just don't move. And I was like, what if I take a leak? Like, will you fucking piss yourself? And I was like, oh, it wasn't a great experience.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I didn't have a fractured neck. It was a bad x-ray in the first one. But I had then another experience where around that same time, I was watching a documentary. It was by a guy named Gunther von Hagens, I think is how you pronounce his name. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
How do you even remember these things? I don't even remember what I watch.
Because he does live dissections. Not like the person not alive. Like he does it live on a cadaver. So he doesn't just dissect a living person in front of a crowd, but he does it with actual dead bodies. And he does it to show the effects of different pathology and like issues and what they actually look like on a body. And he one day did this demonstration where he was talking about how sensitive the brain is and how good our skulls are at protecting the brain with the cerebral spinal fluid cushioning it. He had this jelly, this tub jelly, and he's like, this is made to the consistency of what our brain is. And he dropped it on the floor and just splattered everywhere.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's fucked. So I started researching brain damage. And I used to adamantly defend MMA and say, it's safer than boxing. And it's like, well, actually, that doesn't mean anything because boxing's pretty fucked. And I started realizing that when you look into the effects of brain damage and CTE, you see even people playing, soccer and heading the ball. It's not that hard to get. So I realized that, having a career where you get punched in the head frequently is not really something you should really aspire to unless you feel like you can't do anything else because that's just the drive that you have. And for me, I felt an attraction towards other things in life that I didn't feel like I needed to risk my quality of living in the later years to keep pursuing that.
Was that during the time when I last saw you?
Yeah, it would have been.
That's when you're like telling me this is something that you didn't want to keep doing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, you pain all the time. You don't really get any money. And at the time, it really looked like it was really hard to get money. Like the UFC had literally just put weight divisions in that would match what I would want to fight at.
Yeah.
And it was all really new. They were really underfunded. And I was just like, man, there's no money in this. There's a lot of health issues. There's a lot of damage you take. Like, you only do this because it's the only thing you can see yourself doing.
So how many fights have you actually done?
Oh, man.
Because you've done a few, haven't you?
Done a few Muay Thai ones. I actually didn't fight MMA. Yeah, so I actually only ever did Muay Thai fights. And I did, because we didn't actually have MMA fights at the time. So I did MMA, like smokers and like into sparring competitions because we didn't actually have like proper MMA fights. At the time, it wasn't really a thing. So you'd have like into gym sparring sessions, which were like, you just go hard sparring. Yeah. So I feel really lucky that I was able to, that I had those health issues so early on before I actually went down the rabbit hole of trying to truly pursue it as a career and end up with that gambler's fallacy of feeling like I need to keep putting into it to justify my choices.
Shit. Wow.
We were talking about this a little bit off the mic, but a lot of people say having like learning martial arts or a self-defense thing is good. It helps you discipline the mind. You were saying that you had other opinions, so we want to hear your thoughts on this.
I don't know. Like, it depends what you mean by discipline, right? Because like, does martial arts teach you to discipline your mind? And the answer is yes, with a caveat, because it disciplines you in the period of adversity, right? You're training hard. It's a stressful situation. You're trying to like spar with someone or grapple with someone who's denying you the opportunity to feel comfortable. Being able to learn to be comfortable in that scenario, that's a form of mental discipline that you can really only get from martial arts for a lot of it. You can get it for some high risk activity, sure. But martial arts really gives that to you and punches you in the face.
Literally.
But
Yeah.
does it teach you discipline in the wider sense of the word? I don't think it does. Man, like if you look at MMA today, most of the people who are martial artists, a lot of them are really terrible role models. They're bad people. Like you look at even like traditional martial arts where they would have emphasized, the mental and spiritual aspect of martial arts, because they might say that MMA in its current form has neglected that side of martial arts. Man, all that was is a system that perpetuated like authoritarian figures, and you end up with all these gyms, like no joke, so many gyms, and in traditional martial arts gyms as well, where you have fucking coaches who are a bit groomy, a little bit touchy-feely, and you find out that that's actually a common thing, just like you find out in any situation where you have people given unjust authority and undeserved authority in the way that martial arts gives. I
have heard about that though. Like someone I knew that used to own like a lot of martial arts schools, and they said it was just like that, where another school would come in and like want to insert their authority and be like, my school or like our discipline's better than yours kind of thing.
Yeah.
So have heard of that before too. But I think like, yeah, in a way, disciplining the mind, I think it's good because you're pushing yourself through something that's like always difficult. And I think it disciplines your mind in terms of pushing through the hardest things, and you just can always grow on that too. So I think it's good in that sense.
Yeah, but it's not something unique to martial arts, right?
Yeah.
It's good for that, but it's a very specific thing.
Yeah.
You get that like someone who is a rower, right? You ever go rowing? It's
pretty hard.
It's super hard. Those people have excellent mental discipline. Cross-country runner, a triathlete, excellent mental discipline. And martial arts adds the other aspect to it. The adversity is a little bit, is definitely much more present in the form of a person trying to do something new. But, that mental discipline, for some people, they can take it to their day-to-day lives in a positive way. And for some people, they don't take it to their day-to-day lives in a positive way. They then see every form of their life and challenge as some form of adversity where they try to personify and fight something, rather than have adversity where you can actually proceed in a more healthy source of motivation than just being angry or
Yeah.
That's true.
adversarial. Like,
Yeah, because I've I've watched a lot of like random YouTube guys who do martial arts, whether it's, specific karate, taekwondo, etc., but they always talk about discipline in the fact of when they're learning, it teaches them a better way or better mindset and outset in life in general. So whether it's how they approach a certain situation or how they deal with certain situations, it's just doing that particular martial arts or just being in a part of it has taught them so much. So that's why it's an interesting question, because it's like, well, does it actually? And I think from your point of view, it really
depends.
Yeah, it seems to depend, because like I enjoy martial arts. It's like, for an example, like Muay Thai, right? I find that Muay Thai challenges me in a physical and a mental capacity, right? Because you're putting yourself not just physically, but mentally, as you mentioned, getting punched in the face, getting kicked, getting kneed, getting elbowed. Like, it's getting that forward pressure or just pressure in general. It's how do you deal with it? And how do you either, to put it in a way of mathematical point of view, how do I overcome that situation where I can get back at that person? It's kind of like playing chess, right? It's like you're taking certain
like that one
strategy
for one.
or it's either you make a move, how does that person think and how does that person move? What's their body position? How can we overcome those certain positions? And that's why I enjoy doing like Muay Thai, for an example, because it's challenging your mind in that way. But physically, you have to be fit. You have to be in a well-conditioned, level.
But I think like in a way of, I think it still does work in terms of discipline, because say, for example, you're sparring, right? Not everyone is the same size as you or the same skill as you. So you have to learn to not just go as hard as you can just because you can. And that's the discipline. Because
so the
then
sparring etiquette.
Yeah, you got to learn the etiquette and then say, like, I spar you, like you need to, like, you kind of work with me and I work with you in terms of skill set. And then if we're like, okay, this is good, we can ramp it up a little. That's the discipline. Whereas I think that works is that's how you train that discipline. But yeah, there are some people who don't know how to gauge that power or don't know how to scale it back when they're like hitting too hard. But I think like in terms of trying to help people to learn that area of the etiquette, I think it's good.
Yeah. And I think this is something that me and Al, we spoke about etiquette where off the mic, in the fact of how people, when you're sparring or just rolling, just BJJ for an example, a lot of people don't realize, like you said, a body difference, the mass, and how you would basically move. And it's about feeling your partner. With specifically to Muay Thai, it's like I find that when people spar, some people don't realize that their mass or the speed can equate to actually hitting or doing some damage. And what you mentioned exactly that is people don't realize that the discipline behind learning is about how to control yourself in how you execute that particular move. You're punching, you're kicking, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And well, look, essentially what you guys have said is you said that martial arts teaches you, it gives you a scenario where you can have this perfect blend of trying to anticipate someone's strategic movements and thoughts, but also have the physical challenges there alongside it. And then you mentioned that the martial arts gives you the opportunity to be challenged in a different way, which is to understand self-control.
Yeah.
But for every one of those examples, there's another activity where you can draw those exact same mental learnings development from. It's just that, and martial arts, so if the question is, does martial arts give you the opportunity to practice things from mental discipline? Yes, it does. And it does that in such great ways, in many combinations of it. But for every person that does it well, there's another person who's learned nothing from it.
Yeah.
And the point there is that if you can sit down and go, all right, I'm going to treat my martial arts training just like I treat a chess match, or I treat my martial arts training with less experienced people, just like I would think about the patience needed to, knit. Or every one of those, you can take that mental learning, that mental discipline from any activity.
Yeah.
And some people don't. Martial arts is a great opportunity to find it, but it doesn't have a monopoly on it, and neither is it actually so effective that everyone who does it turns out well, because there's so many terrible examples that exist in every single gym. So martial arts is good as an opportunity, but there is a mental side of coaching of martial arts that doesn't exist today. It's still this weird thing that when you hear about, there's a fighter who's currently going sports psychology training, that really is something that is, if we're talking about martial arts, is going to be good for mental discipline. That we're not teaching it well enough in that facet. And so only some people get to learn and some people don't.
Yeah. I like that point of view too. It's very interesting. You don't hear it. Another one, like going back to overtraining. So was there anything that you started to do to scale back and help yourself in terms of health and mental health as well?
Yes, 100%. So we had in 2011, which is when we last really hung out, we had a death in the family, and it was a pretty bad one. And that was kind of like the catalyst for me, where I really had to help out some family with that. And I realized, you know what, this is like I was already on the edge, clearly, for the most part. And then that happened. And that just, I was like, well, I can't, keep this together now. So I actually dropped out of uni.
Oh, wow.
I dropped out of uni, which freed up so much time. And I just started training for fun. Like I was like, you know what, like, I don't know if I'll ever fight again. And I don't know if I'll really compete. And I just started training for fun. And it really, like, my jiu-jitsu got so much better doing that. Like I didn't get injured in that time period where I didn't do that. And what I did was I actually would wake up most days. I was still working at the gym, and so I could still keep fit and I could still train pretty well, and train many hours. And it was just, but also no expectations. I had no expectations. It was just, I was just living to enjoy what I was doing as a hobby and activity. And it was great. Like, and my personality and my outlook on so many things related to these things changed rapidly in that period of time.
Yeah. It's amazing how, like, once you just change your mindset, it changes the way you view, like, everything that you do on that day is like exactly the same, but the way you think about it, it just changes the whole way of how you see what you're doing.
It was really like, to do something well, I really need to let go of so many other things. And I think that's a reality for so many people.
Don't try to do too much or like take on everything and think that you can like succeed or have too high of an expectation for yourself, right?
Yeah. And it's hard because, you hear about stories like, like this, I was actually talking a similar story to this not that long ago about Chris Hadfield. I don't know if you guys know him, the astronaut. The guy was International Space Station. He had the music video where he sang Space Oddity by David Bowie whilst he was actually on the space station. It's super cool.
Do you know?
I've like briefly seen it. I haven't actually watched the whole thing.
Yeah, if you look at that guy's story, he was pretty much born, and I'm pretty sure like he was like, his first words were, "I want to be an astronaut." Like that dude, his whole life was just like, everything I'm doing, I'm going to be an astronaut. Just did so many things. And then you hear about his story and you're like, wow, man, I suck. But we're not all Chris Hadfield, If we were, we would all be in space and conquering some shit. Like, and I think we've all grown up with this idea of hustle culture, we want to get rich. We want to get a career that we love. We want to achieve all these things. And man, and yet all that's happened is that's increased and people are just more stressed, anxious, and depressed.
Yeah, true. Eh?
And because for a lot of us, maybe there's some happy medium between striving to achieve and doing fuck all. And somewhere in that happy medium is where most people find themselves to be happy, productive, and peaceful.
Yeah, I find that really true because there was one episode we were talking about money, right? So it was, would you want to have endless amount of money or like be the richest person in the world, or would you just rather be happy? And for me, I would rather just have good enough pay where you're happy and you're doing something that you love. But I think the main goal for me is just finding that happiness rather than chasing money, chasing like being the top in my career or something like that. So I agree with you in that sense.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone, but I think it's for a lot more people than we'd like to admit,
Yeah, that's very true. Eh?
Yeah.
Because even now, like, the expectation or people think that you need two jobs, like you're full-time and then you have a side project that you need to earn side income, and like that's kind of the thing now, and everyone's just overworking.
Yeah. It's just like, there's a whole bunch of political discussions that can go around that and frame that as a conversation.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's like, just want to be happy. We don't want to be stressed. We don't want to be anxious about everything. Like if you had the choices between richest person in the world or be happy, you don't want to be hungry, sure. Like you got to be working well enough and things going well enough that you're not worried about bills so much and food. But if you got your bare essentials, I'd rather be happy any day.
Me too.
Any day.
Yeah, it's hard to find that balance, especially initially you're taking on so much work because you obviously your mindset's like, okay, this is a goal that I want to get to, but it's about the direction or the pathway that gets you to that goal essentially, right? But then I think a lot of people don't realize, like, in order for you to get to that direction, there's a lot of work that has to get to that.
Yeah, like it's going to be hard when you first start, or like when you're trying to find your place or that, which is one part of your journey. But I think for it to continue where you just keep getting more and more money or like whatever it is, like it's going to be hard to maintain mentally.
And I think it's just that point where you go, okay, am I too anxious? Am I stressed out? It's about realizing and dialing it back like you did, where you just said, okay, I'm just going to stop uni, but you're still focused on what you enjoy doing, which is training. And I think that's what made you realize, oh shit, there's more to MMA fighting than, in life. So let's put it this way. What are the top 3 things that you could say to someone if someone was in the same situation where they're working their ass off, they're overworking, they're fucking taking on all this shit? What are the top 3 things you would say to someone to be like, hey man, balance yourself, or realize that you're taking on too much work?
Everyone's different, right? And so really the first thing you can really do, no matter who you are, is to be honest with yourself. Like if you actually honestly ask yourself, is this what I want to do? Is this what I enjoy right now? Is this what makes me happy? Is this what brings fulfillment to my life? Then fuck, don't listen to me. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You got to sort it. Yeah, sure. But if you're doing that and you sit down and go, actually, why am I working this job? And you go, actually, it's because I have this thing in my head where I need to get rich. Why am I trying to study at the same time as pursuing something else? And is it because I don't want to disappoint my family? Because, your family wants you to go to uni, and then you go, actually, why do I want to be a fighter? And, or anything, this is general advice. Like, why do you want that thing? And if you can honestly say that I want to do all those things and it's what I want to do, then man, go hard. But if you honestly sit down and ask yourself those questions for each one of those things that's taken up your time, and some of those things are questionable about whether or not you want to pay that energy cost, then you need to turn it down. You need to refocus. You need to reprioritize.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing from there is if you can't sit down by yourself with the feelings, thoughts, and anxieties that you have, then you need to work towards something to help you do that. Because that's like, so much of the stuff I would have done in the past, and even done so recently, is I'll go, shit, like, man, I need to do this kind of training now, or I need to read this kind of like the science journal this many times a week. I do it all my whole life. Like I left martial arts for a bit, wasn't like in the heavy way, and just found another thing to burn myself out on. Like I'm just really good at that. And so it's taken a lot of work to tone that down and be able to sit down and go, actually, that voice in my head that's telling me to keep chasing after something, it's not necessarily the thing that's going to bring me happiness. And if it is, go to town, but you got to be honest with yourself about it.
So did you pick up like another hobby or something because you felt like you needed something to fill up your time?
So when I realized I wasn't going to make money being a fighter, I was like, shit, I better make my money some other way. So I went to uni, and I went hard at uni. Like I burned myself out in my last year of uni. But that's again because I was like still trying to work full time and study full time, do all these things. But I told myself it was temporary. But even then, the damage of doing that temporarily to my mental health was a lot, and it took me a while to overcome that. And like a lot of people, would just say that they, you just don't let yourself break down like that. Like maybe, but like all I think that means is we're not some people who can push through that maybe are much better at tricking themselves and thinking that it's okay. I came out of that and I decided to calm down again. Then my dad, my stepdad, he died, and that put a whole nother situation where I felt like I got sucked into this idea of working really hard to make sure that we're financially secure and my family's financially secure. And then I got out of that a few years ago and I was like, actually, shit, that's not that important anymore. Like, if we're all safe, not hungry and all good, like, man, I'd rather just be happy. So I've gone through a few cycles since leaving martial arts because, you just once you strive for something and you work hard for something, it feels wrong when you're not. And it's taken me the better part of 10 years to really start to realize that actually it's okay to realize that that's not that it's fine to let go of those things.
I think that's all part of life experiences too, right?
Yeah.
We all have our own individual pathways, but we go through these things to really ultimately learn. We make mistakes and that sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, okay, we've gone through this, but we could have handled it differently. Or your outset in terms of life changes, like you did when you realized about fighting. You know, it's like, oh, okay, I could have earned this much money, but now I got to, okay, let's look at other avenues to earn money in a safer way or an easier way. So I think life experiences is what really teaches us, our own pathway.
Yeah, so like say that, because obviously life always like is always moving, and another one of these events happen, what's like the next thing that you would tell yourself to not burn yourself out or like get that feeling again? Is it just reassessing those priorities all over again as well?
Yeah, pretty much. It really is just now the awareness of what does it mean for me to feel calm? What does it mean to me to feel rested and at peace? Because I can have a really stressful life and still hold those things. But as soon as I start to feel like I lose that and lose that self and always maintain that self-awareness of where I am in that state, then things need to change. Like I'm more than happy to do something really stressful, really hard, because you do want to achieve some things, but don't make that your life, and refocusing, being self-aware is always been the skill that I value so much now.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And it's also really hard for people to sometimes find that too. And it's cool that you know you can do a lot, but you know when it becomes too much, and like learning that over time.
Your balance.
Yeah, from your experiences.
Well, look, and it's also that whole thing of like, I try really hard not to compare myself to anyone now.
Yeah,
that's true.
Like a few years ago, after all the cycles of burning myself out, doing something, chilling out, burning myself out, chilling out, I felt like I didn't achieve as much as I did despite burning myself out repeatedly, because I just burned myself out instead of actually working towards something. But like, man, I sat down, I was like, man, I'm a chemical engineer with pretty cool job. I get to do pretty cool things. I go diving, I go rock climbing, I go four-wheel driving. Like, and I still sit down and go like, oh man, I'm just not doing well in my life. You're like, oh man, shut the fuck up. Like, like it's going pretty well. Like, you should probably just take a step back and think about what's going on, because it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, those are awesome stuff. Like all of
But like, if you can't be happy with that, then clearly the place where you can become happy is not from chasing after those things and chasing after more things, because, well, otherwise it's just always going to be a nebulous goal that you'll never reach.
Yeah, sometimes we don't realize what we got is the best, and we overlook at it. You know what I mean? It's like we're aiming for something else, or we're comparing ourselves to someone else, and we're like, oh fuck, we're not pushing ourselves hard enough to get to that point.
Well, I think it's also realizing what you're happy with. So like what you were saying, like you've got all this stuff, but you're still not happy. It means that like you're not, like something in that is not making you happy. So say you really like we both really like cars or something like that, and you continue to keep working on your cars, but I know my place is I'm happy that my car is stock and I'm happy that I've got that, but you're happy with having the like power and stuff like that. And I could easily compare and be like, my car is so slow compared to yours, but I know that I'm happy with what I've got, and I've got this car, which is a rare car to find nowadays, but I'm happy with that. Whereas you what makes you happy is having that power, having whatever you want to do to your car. It's different. Like we're two different people, so I think it's just finding that.
Yeah,
what makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly right. But with you, Al, what's next? You obviously said your injury, so what's your plans now? Are you gonna heal that, go back into it, or what?
Yeah, look, I'm gonna heal. I'm in a weird spot. So like I've put off my knee injury, my knee surgery for so long that I've managed to do so many other things that I enjoy. And I've recently just started fixing other injuries that I have. Like I have so many injuries, and I've started rehabilitating them, and I've been working down the list of rehabilitating old injuries and just seeing how I feel. And I'm actually on probably the last major one that I really want to fix, and before the knee, and I feel pretty good. So I'm actually unsure what I'm going to do. after that. But I'll come back to martial arts. Like, man, I fucking love martial arts. Yeah. Like, and like, it's just an addiction at this point. But
we gotta train with you then. Teach us some skills.
Yeah, man, I got nothing to teach. I'm terrible. I'm behind the times.
Says the one that's been teaching for how many years?
It's just like the game changes.
Yeah.
But I do keep on top of what's going on. But like in terms of what I'm doing, man, like I just do what I want to do now. Like I like my job. I like what I can do. I like all my other hobbies, and I like martial arts. I'm no rush to be the best at anything now. I'm just moving day by day, doing things that I find fun.
I think that's the best way to look at life too.
Just chill and just enjoy life. You know what I mean? And not stress over like small shit. You know what I mean? Just keep punching along, see where that takes you. So
I think that's good. Like some really good advice, like not just related to martial arts or balance, but I think in terms of the outlook of life, I think what you've said have been really strong and really good just for other people to hear as well.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for sharing it, man.
No worries.
Appreciate it.
You should be proud, man.
Yeah, I reckon.
Proud.
Yeah, man. Yeah, let us know in the comments what's a way that you guys have taken to balance.
What are your methods that you like to do for yourself when you realize that you're just taking on too much, or how you try to find yourself and be more grounded?
Yeah. Are you like Al, where you sit down and think about, are you complacent in your priorities and are you happy? Because I think that's actually a really good way to identify yourself as well. Some people can't actually sit alone and think, right? So I think it's really good that you can use that skill and hone in on that and just sit there and think about it. Let us know in the comments. But otherwise, thank you for listening and thank you, Al.
No worries. Thank you guys.
Peace out.
Bye.